undisrupted and to prevent such incidents in the future. Gauteng Police Provincial Commissioner Tomim Tombeni, along with the senior police officials, took their crime-fighting efforts to the West Rand last night. The area has been a hotspot of illegal mining and other related crimes. And finally, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has urged the Palestinians to unite amid Israel's war in Gaza following hours-long talks with Hamas chief Ismail Haniyeh in Istanbul, according to his office. Ankara has repeatedly slammed Israel's incursion into Gaza amid its failed attempts to stop the conflict, which has roiled the Middle East since the 7th of October last year. Tensions in the region are running high as Israel braces for a new Israeli offensive on the southernmost city of Rafah and after a reported Israeli attack on Iran on Friday. As soaring tensions between Iran and Israel stoke fears of a wider regional war, Erdogan said recent events should not allow Israel to gain ground and that it is important to act in a way that keeps attention on Gaza. Hamas has had an office in Turkey since 2011, when Turkey helped to secure the agreement for the group to free Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit. Erdogan has maintained links with Haniyeh, the group's political leader who has been a frequent visitor. Separately, yesterday, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan held talks with visiting Egyptian Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry, with both men emphasizing the need to deliver more humanitarian aid to devastated Gaza where the threat of famine looms. Taking a look at the temperatures, Durban is at 19 to 27, Richards Bay 21 to 28, Ulundi 16 to 32, Ladysmith 12 to 32, and Margate is at 21 to 26. Yerevan Pietermaritzburg is at 16 to 29, and Newcastle is at 12 to 31. For Al-Ansar News, I'm Tabile Duma.
The views and opinions expressed by the guest and presenters of Radio Al-Ansar are not necessarily the views and opinions of Radio Al-Ansar and the Al-Ansar Foundation. We'd love to meet you. Pay us a visit. Radio Al-Ansar.
Get ready for Green Thumbs Up, the gardening and natural living show you didn't know you needed. I'm your host and life coach, Rabia Carvalho, and we're talking birds, bees, butterflies, and blooms, growing food in garden rooms, home-based holistic healing, and much more. Whether you're a seasoned gardener or nature lover, plant assassin, or permaculture professional, we got you. We got you. Let us bring you the ideas, the facts, support, and inspiration to go green wherever you are. Sundays 9 to 10 a.m. only on Radio Al-Ansar. Hey, 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 it's Green Thumbs Up Day. That's right, you're tuned into Green Thumbs Up on Radio Al-Ansar. Whether you're joining us on 90.4 FM in Durban or you're joining us in Pietermaritzburg on 105.6 FM, welcome, welcome, welcome. One and all, we are that gardening and natural living show you didn't know you needed. The show where everybody's an expert and nobody has all the answers. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I am your host and life coach, Rabia Carvalho. And today we have a spectacular show for you. Yes, we do, because we have a guest in studio that I know all of y'all and all out there are going to want to speak to and ask questions of. We have Nico Glintenkamp with us, who is the president of the Natal Orchid Society, and he is also on the South African Orchid Council, and he is here to talk to us this morning about what are we talking about?
Plant nutrition.
Yes, plant nutrition. And yes, we are. Now, the reason we're doing this for the listeners who've just tuned in is because on the 5th of May, save the date, save the date, save the date, the 5th of May, we are going to be having a bonsai and orchid show right here at Radio Al-Ansar, and a plant share and swap. So bring your plants, bring your seeds, swap them out for stuff you don't have, and come and join us for a bonsai and orchid exhibition where you can determine which orchid you like. Now, you may know orchids as those pretty little things you buy at the corner store. And those little orchids are normally your Phalaenopsis, right, Nico?
That's correct. Phalaenopsis wooleritis or Phalaenopsis checkeritis.
Oh, I love that.
That's where we get them from.
That's where we get them from. So this is Nico Glinton-Camp. If you've just joined us, welcome. WhatsApp us your questions on orchids or on plant nutrition. You may have some other plants there that are having problems with nutrition, and you can WhatsApp 060-904-1056. In another, say, 10 minutes or so, we will be opening the line, so you will be able to call us in studio with your orchidee questions, and that number will be 0861-904-904. So let's welcome Nico, who you've already heard on the line. If you'd like to watch us, we're also on Facebook, Radio Al-Ansar. So join us over there as well. So many places to listen to us. Subhanallah. So Nico,
Yes.
welcome.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you so much for accepting the invitation. And I'm really looking forward to the 5th.
Yes, the same here.
Yes.
It's going to be great fun. We're going to get the orchid people together.
Yes.
And society, and we'll come
Yes.
through and we'll have a lot of orchids, and we'll be showing them and giving talks on orchids and all the different types and
Yes.
how to grow them the best way and what their requirements are. Especially, some orchids have a rest period, come winter, some don't. So it's very important to know when your orchids are resting and when your orchids are growing, and that will also then tie in with how you feed them.
Yes.
So it's very important that we actually know it. Now we're coming into the winter season, so we need to start wintering our orchids and saying, okay, which ones now need more water or less water, and obviously the feeding as well, because your orchids going into rest, it doesn't need as much nutrients as you would in the growing season.
Now, people may not know that orchids need rest.
Yes, correct.
They may not know that orchids need rest. And there are different orchids, right? So we are used to, as you say, the Phalaenopsis
wooleritis.
Wooleritis.
Or checkeritis. Those are the ones that we buy.
I love that.
Yeah.
But let us then break it down for the listener at home. A dear listener, I know that you know those orchids. You walk into the checkeritis or the wooleritis and you do see those beautiful flowers, and they can be quite pricey there. And those are your Phalaenopsis, those big glossy green leaves. They look like little doggies' tongues.
Yes, correct. With the big leaves and the upright, or they often curve the flowers depending on how they're staked in the growing process.
Yeah, but what categories then are there of orchids?
Oh, orchids is probably one of the second largest plant families or plants in the plant world. So it's huge. It is absolutely phenomenally huge. You get orchids on virtually every single continent.
Right.
Except for Antarctica, and in virtually all different climates. So you get orchids that will grow on top of mountains and down in the tropical rainforests. You get orchids that grow everywhere in the velds of South Africa. So it's a huge plant group.
And some of them I've seen are teeny, tiny little orchids.
Correct. You get the miniature orchids, which are very delicate. And normally here in Durban, we grow them in terrariums to keep the humidity up, because they require a lot of humidity.
Okay.
Because, if you have a look where orchids come from, you have a look at Thailand or Asia and places like that, where it's very hot, very humid. So, our climate is not quite as hot and humid. If you've ever been to Singapore, it's almost 100% humidity and it's 29 degrees day and night. And that's where Phalaenopsis grow the best. So they require a lot of water.
Yeah, I remember once doing some work for the Filipinos, and we looked at, when I went to see them, they had these orchids. They literally had, how do I explain it, poles in the ground in a long row, and all along these poles were these beautiful orchids just growing like that. There was no sphagnum moss, there was nothing.
Yes, because if you have a look at the humidity levels, a lot of those orchids, like your vandas and your macaras, they just actually grow against a fence or against a wall, because they don't need it. Because you understand, with the orchid root is very different to any other kind of plant. There's a thin little root inside that big fat root. And the root is actually covered by a product called velamin.
Okay.
And that velamin is a super absorbent sponge. So what it does is it absorbs the humidity from the air, and it stores that humidity in that velamin. But the problem with velamin is it doesn't know when to switch off and stop absorbing water.
Okay.
So that's why most people end up overwatering their orchids and killing it. Because the root doesn't know when to stop. Because if you take the natural environment of an orchid, you take cattleyas, they come from the jungles of South America, from the Amazon rainforest. So if you have a look at that climate, you're going to get rainfall throughout the day. You'll have a thunderstorm, then it clears up, then the wind blows, and they grow mounted onto trees. Because most orchids are what we refer to as being epiphytic. So epiphytic being epi, above, and they grow in the air.
Right.
So what we do is we put them into pots because obviously easier to transport, and for our homes, it's very difficult to have mounted orchids in your home because
where does the water go when you water them?
Where does the water go when you water them? So, if you have a look at the natural environment of an orchid, they have a lot of humidity and a lot of frequent rainfall during the day, and that is how they actually grow. So their roots are designed for that. So what happens is we chuck them in a pot and then we water them every day or every second day.
Yes.
And that root is going to just absorb and absorb until it's so waterlogged that eventually the rot sets into the roots.
Yeah.
And then normally the first symptom is that your leaves start to wilt.
Yes.
And then people think, I haven't watered enough, because they think it's like a normal.
So let's give it more water.
Let's give it more water. But you've actually killed the roots.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the best thing to do is you always got to make sure that, especially with Phalaenopsis, they need to be in a damp sort of growing medium, constant damp, because the Phalaenopsis is one of those orchids we refer to as being a monopedal orchid.
Right.
So in other words, it doesn't have a pseudobulb that stores water and nutrients, because it's got the one straight upright stem and the leaves come out on either side of it. That is what we call a monopedal.
Right.
They need constant water and constant food.
Yes.
But they need the drying out.
But little bits.
Yes, they need the drying out between the watering.
Yes. I remember when we spoke to Gordon, and he's on the show, and he said, give them a little but a lot.
Of food.
A lot of, so frequently, but little bits. So you're not giving them, a lot of food at once. Yeah. We do have a question that's coming out. It's not related to orchids, but I'm going to take it. It does say, good morning. This is from Naranjini. Naranjini, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Naranjini, I don't know. Good morning. Why are my roses not blooming? Well, roses bloom different times of the year. This is kind of when roses stop blooming. We're getting to the end of summer. So you're going to find kind of the last few roses bloom, but this is the time when you should stop feeding and they actually start to go to sleep. Yes. So come the springtime, make sure that you give them a good composting, give them a little bit of a pruning back, otherwise they will self-prune. Parts of it will die away, and then give it its water. Also check that it's in the right place, because if a plant is not blooming when it's supposed to bloom, usually it's because there's so much nutrition it doesn't feel the need to give you a flower. Now, are orchids that way? Orchids
are fairly similar. Some orchids, what we say, they require a rest period.
Yes.
So in other words, when the weather starts to change, the daytime hours start to reduce, so you have less sun during the day. You've gone from a, say, 12-hour or a 14-hour sun we're going down to about a 12, 10-hour day. So the orchid starts to signify it's time to rest. So everything slows down on the orchid, and the orchid actually becomes dormant. And it requires less water, because it's obviously not breathing, it's not transpiring the water out of the leaves. So the uptake will be less. But certain orchids don't actually rest, like Phalaenopsis, they don't have a rest period.
Okay. And we do have a question on orchids from Sister Anisa. Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum salam. I received a yellow orchid from woolenitis. Wooleritis. She says wooleritis. Last April. Subhanallah. And I have taken care to not overwater. It is in prime condition with healthy, thick green leaves and new leaves emerging. So obviously a Phalaenopsis, but very well. It hasn't flowered since the last time I received it in April.
Okay. Phalaenopsis generally flowers September, October in the year. So this would be your right time now to start to feed it to encourage blooming. So what you would need to do is you'll need to find a fertilizer that has a high, your fertilizers, let me break it down, comes in, on fertilizer, you have your NPK.
Yes.
So you have your nitrogen, your phosphorus, and your potassium.
Yes.
So your orchids, in order to flower, need a bit more potassium. So you want to find an orchid food that has a high K number. A lot of them, I think the Stark Ayers have a very nice flowering food. And if you have a look at it, it's got a very, very high K number. So that is what you want to start feeding your orchids with, potassium.
So potassium is bananas. So you could
correct.
use banana skin tea.
Banana skin tea. But just a word of advice on banana skin tea. What we do is, we take the banana skins, put it in a jug of hot water and leave it for 2 days. Once we do that, we strain it so it's a clear liquid, and then we microwave it to bring it to the boil.
Oh, to kill off any fungi that might be there.
Any fungi or any bacteria, because you don't know what's living on the banana skin.
Yes.
So you don't want to introduce that bacteria or fungus to your plant.
Yeah.
So just bring it to the boil beforehand.
And also it's been 2 days, so there's so much stuff in the air. What I realized when I was trying to grow mushrooms is that there are so many spores in the air. We think of seeds that go into the ground, but we don't consider the spores of all sorts of weird mycelium and molds and things that are in the air. And that can fall into the water, especially people are collecting rainwater to then water their plants, and then they wonder why they have a fungal infection. It's a great idea what you're saying.
Just bring it to the boil.
Nuke it for a bit before you actually go ahead and use it, and then don't pour it on boiling. We're saying boil it, but then
let it cool down.
let it cool down. So you were taking us through the NPK. So
correct.
The phosphorus being the potassium being the banana skins, right?
Yes, correct. So your nitrogen is what creates the
green leaves.
The green leaves. It helps to feed the chlorophyll in your leaves.
Yes.
So you need your nitrogen. But one of the other important factors, people always think of your macronutrients as just being nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium.
Yes.
But you've also got your secondary macronutrients, which will be your magnesium, sulfur, and calcium.
Aha.
Now, being a plant, it's got cells, it's like a human being. We need calcium for strong bones, strong teeth, and the same thing for an orchid.
We need magnesium, definitely.
Correct, as well.
For the bones.
But definitely with calcium, you need that to create strong cell structures within the plant.
Yes.
So you normally need to give a bit of an additive to your food as well. So what I always like to say to people, read your label on the back, and your label will then obviously tell you what is in your plants. So that is also very, very good to have a look at.
So your bone meal, that would be calcium?
No, that is mostly phosphate.
Phosphate. Okay.
And that's very good for root development. That goes for any plant. So what you want to do is, even if you're planting a rose or you're planting something in your garden, always mix a handful of your bone meal with the soil and the potting mix. It just helps to give a strong root structure.
Yes.
Because obviously any plant, what you've got to have first is a strong root structure.
Now you've brought us a bit of a show and tell.
I've brought a bit of
Please show us.
A bit of a problem with some roots here.
Please show us. We'll have to keep you close to the microphone. Now, if you're not on Facebook, come and join us on Facebook so you can have a look at this.
Can we see this?
Let me have a look. I'm sure we can. So what Nico's holding up for us is a phalaenopsis, one of your Wooleritis specials, and it has got all of these roots that have kind of grown outside of the pot. Correct. And they are falling down quite a long ways down. So. Okay, so maybe just move it closer to your microphone, then people can see it a little bit further up. There you go.
There we go.
So that is your phalaenopsis, and those are the roots that have gone mad, but they are still quite green.
They are very green because this hangs in the greenhouse.
Look towards your face, yeah.
So this hangs in the greenhouse, so it's got continuous moisture and humidity. So the roots do very well growing outside.
Right.
Because in a greenhouse, I've obviously got controlled conditions. I have much higher humidity, and I have constant watering. So the roots will grow fine like this.
Yes.
But it looks a mess.
Yes, it does. It looks like the Medusa of plants.
And as you can see, clear pots, everybody says, oh, orchids need a clear pot. This is what happens to a clear pot after time. It actually just looks, it's full of moss, it's full of algae. It's pointless having a clear pot.
So what do you recommend we plant them in?
I always recommend terracotta pots. Because the terracotta pot, the clay breathes.
Okay.
So what happens is when you've watered, it dries out a little bit easier and a little bit quicker. So you've got a constant sort of airflow as well. Because that's one thing that's very important about orchids is air movement and airflow around the roots. Because as I mentioned earlier in the beginning, they grow in trees or they grow mounted. They're epiphytes. Right. So their roots are very, very happy to be out and exposed like this. So this actually works very well.
So WhatsApp your questions if you have questions on orchids or on plant food, plant nutrition, 060-904-1056. If you would like to call in and speak to Nico or myself, please contact us on 0861-904-904. We have a question that has come in. Again, this one's not on orchids, but it is Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum salam. Let me see who, no name here. My ferns have died. I was out from the 25th of March to the 17th of April. How do I rejuvenate them? Please help. So if they are completely dead, then there's no saving them.
There's no saving them.
But what you can do is you can trim back all the parts that are dead. And I'll tell you what I did that actually saved 3 of my tree ferns. And if it'll save a tree fern, it might save your plant as well. And that is, I went and got myself some kefierated milk, some milk kefir.
Yes.
And I diluted that in water. And you can buy the plain milk kefir, not the sweetened one, not the chocolate and strawberries and things, just the plain milk kefir, because it's had the lactose removed. So the amount of nutrients in it is much higher, and of course it's more readily available to your fern, and you can dilute that in water. So say a tablespoon of milk kefir to about a half a cup to a cup of water, a tablespoon of milk kefir to 1 cup or 2 cups of water. So dilute it well and then pour that into your fern. Any tips from you in terms of nutrition?
If your ferns are anything, you give them nitrogen. A very good fertilizer, an all-rounder for your garden is a 2-3-2 fertilizer.
Right.
You can buy it in pellet form. It's very easy. You just sprinkle it on your lawn, in your flower beds. Not too much, but just quite lightly sprinkle on. But try and do that before the rains start.
Yes.
Because then the rains help to sort of dissolve it and put it into the ground. But it is brilliant for any garden.
Wonderful.
It brings the soils back to life. It just puts in the nutrients.
Yeah.
It's high in the middle number, so it helps with the root growth and the root structure as well.
And that's what you were saying about the phosphorus. But now you were talking to us about secondary macronutrients, your magnesium,
sulfur, and calcium.
Right.
Yes, that's very important. So what you can do, and a lot of people do as well, when you've got your eggshells, always boil them beforehand to take out any sort of remaining albumin or whatever from the egg. Let it dry out, and then crush that and put that in with your mix, because that's very high in calcium.
Okay.
And also being eggshell, it takes time to dissolve and to break down. So you've got a slow release. We humans as well, we have to eat mostly every day. Your plants also like to eat every day.
Yes.
So when you give too much food at once, the plant says, well, I only need a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's why you try and always slow down the feeding process of your plants.
And it's so interesting what you're saying, because for a lot of people, it's like plants it's almost like they're asleep, and then once a week they wake up to eat, and you feed them, maybe if you feed them once a week, maybe. Some people never feed their plants. We've got another question that's come in here. And this is about an indoor bonsai. So in a plastic PVC pot, and it's dying. I water it once every 3 to 4 days. So you're going to want to come and see our bonsai specialist on the 5th of May at 9 o'clock here at Radio Al Ansar. However, what you might want to do is to just go ahead and see what its roots look like. Has it been dried? Has it dried out? And is it getting enough light? When last have you fed it? Bonsais, because their roots have been made smaller over time, they also need that regular feeding that we're talking about on orchids. They need that regular feeding, but very, very small amounts. We're going to take an ad break quickly, and we'll come back right after this. So don't go away, and we'll see you right after the ad break.
We'd love to meet you. Pay us a visit. Radio Al Ansar.
Save the date for Saturday, April 27, 2024. Why, you may ask? Well, it's the Hajj seminar from 7:45 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. at 207 West Road in Overport. Proudly brought to you by the Al Ansar Foundation and the Capital Group of Companies.
The Sunday Lounge with Salma Kazi Wahab. 10 to 12. Latest nasheeds, Celebrity After Speeches.
السلام عليكم اسمع زين حبيبي يا محمد أتيت بالسلام والهدى محمد.
Events. News from the Nasheed world. Top 10 Countdown. The Sunday Lounge with Salma Kazi Wahab.
Advertising pays. Get your business on the map through advertising with Radio Al Ansar, the station with a proven record. Let's check with Simplex Radio to find out the impact on their business by advertising with Radio Al Ansar.
For us, it works very well. Our sales have increased and more people know about our store. I would definitely recommend advertising on Radio Al Ansar anytime.
There you have it. Join the airwaves and take it up to another level. Call us on 031-208-1601 and ask for Fatima Shahina or Faraz Bucks, our consultants. Let your name be heard by thousands of people. Radio Al Ansar, your partner in business.
So, Bibi Amina, it's going to be 5 kilometers. Would you walk? Would you run? Would you jog? Would you stroll? What would you do?
Okay, I will walk.
You want to walk 5 kilometers?
Yeah, have to.
If you want to walk 5 kilometers with Bibi Amina, then you're going to have to be at the Breakfast Rush, Breakfast Fun Run with your family on the 27th of April. That's a Saturday morning. Run starts, walk starts, stroll starts. It starts at 6:30 a.m. Carry a basket for a picnic because somebody's going to need to share samosa with me.
Getting you through your day. Radio Al Ansar.
Hey, you are back with Green Thumbs Up, and I'm Rabia Carvalho. I'm in studio this morning with Nico Glintenkamp, who is talking to us about plant nutrition, particular focus on orchids. And you can WhatsApp us your questions or comments on 060 904 1056. You could also call us. We are opening the lines now on 0861 904 904. Now, we've got a question in from Howie. Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum salam. My orchid leaves died completely. Nico, how to revive it?
Oh, no. If they've died off completely, you may have a problem. I don't know if we're on camera.
Yes, we are.
If you have growth in the center point, is it a phalaenopsis? First question.
It doesn't say. She doesn't say.
If it's died off completely and your rhizome or your center thing hasn't got a growth in the middle, it's time for a new one.
Okay, it's goodbye.
It's goodbye. Okay. Normally, once your leaves have died off, something has gone very wrong. The roots have gone very wrong. So we need to actually either replace it. But if it has a small growth center in the middle of the plant, then you may have a chance of reviving it. So what you'd have to do is you'd have to unpot it. You'd have to check all your root structure to make your root structure, cut off all the dead roots, and then give it a bit of an intensive care. And what's quite good is sphagnum moss, which keeps a lot of air in it. And then you can put the little root or whatever, the little plant into that sphagnum moss and just keep it damp.
Yes.
Spray it, and it'll help to grow new roots.
Get it great.
But generally, once the leaves are gone, there's not much.
Bye-bye Louis time.
Yeah, it's time to go to Woolies for a new one.
Oh, no.
If it's a phalaenopsis, yeah.
So the thing with the orchids, I've noticed also is if a lot of people never ever take those orchids out of the pot they get it in.
Correct.
It stays there, and then we think it'll just always be okay. But they're not just getting they need to get the nutrients, they need to get water, they need to have humidity. Phalaenopsis are a little finicky, actually. But why the plug? If you ever take your Phalaenopsis that you've bought from the local stores, if you actually lift that out of your pot, dear listener, if you lift that out, you're going to find that there is a plug, a dopey that these little plants have right in the heart of them. So what you do is you lift it out, put it in water perhaps to soften things so you don't break any of the roots, and then you will find that there's this spongy little, it's like a miniature pot in the heart of the base of your plant. Yes or no? I always say just take that out.
Take that out. You know, one of the things that we do when you grow orchids are very finicky to grow from because they are grown in a sealed glass jar, virtually on a petri dish that is completely sealed. So you get a very small little plantlet that gets deflasked, is what we say. Now that normally gets planted first into a wad of sphagnum moss or rock wool, or some people even use foam rubber.
Okay.
which is quite surprising.
Ah.
But when they take that out and they repot it into a bigger plant, they leave that core in there. And then they put it into the bigger one, they fill it up with bark or whatever mix they use. But that little core, if it's sphagnum moss or even rockwool, stays very, very wet. So the problem is you have a look at your plant and you feel the bark around the side of the plant, you think, oh, it's dry.
Meantime,
that little plug is still sopping wet. And that causes the core and the center of the roots to rot first. So I always suggest to people, once you've bought your Phalaenopsis from Woolies or Checkers, wherever you go to, flower it beautifully, let it finish flowering, and then repot it.
Okay.
Because then you take out that plug, you clean off, probably those roots are rotten already in that plug. Clean it off and put it into a fresh bark or mix of your choice. Normally with Phalaenopsis, it's a medium bark with a little bit of sphagnum moss mixed around with it that will keep the humidity in the bark. You repot it that way, then your medium is even and it's consistent.
Yes.
Then your watering regime.
Right.
So,
So, folks, that's the lowdown on getting your orchid from the corner store. We've got the names from the corner stores, and remove that plug. Now, you were talking about, we've got our macronutrients, we have our secondary macronutrients. What I got from that, magnesium, calcium for flowering.
Magnesium and calcium is more for general plant health.
Okay.
If you've noticed your orchid maybe going a little bit red in the cooler weather,
yes,
that's a magnesium deficiency.
Right.
So that just keeps the general plant health. So it's normally fed in lower quantities than your other macronutrients. So if you have a look at a fertilizer, always read the label, because what they often do is they always state the NPK number.
Right.
Then if you have a look further into your ingredients, you will see the percentage magnesium, sulfur, and calcium.
Right.
But sometimes orchids, like Cattleya orchids, they are very, very hungry for calcium because they normally have strong pseudobulbs, big, heavy leaves. They need that calcium to build up their cells and to build up strength. So what I normally do is you normally get a CalMag mix from any retailer. You could find it there.
It's a
CalMag mix. And normally they've added in a few micronutrients to that as well, which is your boron, your iron, your nickel, your copper, and your zinc. Those are required in minute quantities. So always look for a balanced fertilizer, and that will then give you everything that you need.
Yes. And of course, feeding our orchids is regularly.
Weekly,
but little bits, right?
Normally what you can do is you can halve the recommended dosage.
Yes.
And then just feed your orchid even twice a week with that. Because remember, Phalaenopsis are monopedal. So they have no facility to store food. Your Cattleyas and your Oncidiums, they've got big pseudobulbs. That's that big part that sits underneath the leaf.
Yes.
It's normally a big bulb or something.
I was going to say that'll probably go over the head of some of our listeners. So if you imagine the orchid where it's got fatter bits,
that the leaves come from.
The leaves come from. Those fatter bits are what we call pseudobulbs.
That's correct.
Okay.
And those pseudobulbs store water and nutrients. So those orchids actually can go through very long periods of dry because it's all stored.
Yes.
But your Phalaenopsis, your Vanda type orchids, they don't have that storage. So even with your Vandas, very similar to Phalaenopsis, you've got the one center stem with the leaves that come out on either side of it. They need constant feeding and constant water.
I almost want to say that orchids are like the camels of the plant kingdom because they store water,
Correct.
but they still need to be fed.
Correct.
They can go through quite a lot of hardship, and you just need to really take care of them. And there are people that will say, oh gosh, I can't even grow an orchid, it'll die. But do this once a week. Take that orchid, put it into some water with half the dose.
Recommended dose of your chosen fertilizer.
Of a chosen fertilizer. Put it in there for how long?
15, 20 minutes, sometimes half an hour. I wouldn't do it any longer than that because then the roots absorb way too much. Once you've done that, take it out, let the pot drain completely.
Yes.
Don't ever put a tray under your orchid pots and for the water. If you want to do that, you can fill the tray first with stones.
Yes.
And then put the pot on top of the stones. So the pot doesn't sit in the stone, in the water.
Yeah.
But it's got that base of water, which gives it the extra humidity that it sometimes requires as well.
Okay, so we've got a question that came out in terms of that same orchid. The orchid leaves died completely. How to revive it? She says the root is still green.
Well, in that case, I would obviously clean everything off and then cut off all the dead leaves, the yellow leaves, cut them all off, and just see if there's still a bit of a green center on the orchid. And then just put it in some sphagnum moss and just keep it damp and let that root rejuvenate and regrow.
Right. So head over to your local nursery and get yourself some sphagnum moss. I know it sounds weird. It's SPHAG. So sphagnum, NUM, sphagnum moss. And it's kind of like I would say like a fluffy, almost kind of a dry moss that you get. But when you dampen it, it does absorb that water, and it's going to keep your plant nice and damp. I would recommend also when you clip things away, like if you have taken your orchid out of the pot, or if you have, in this case, you're trying to fix this plant and you're cutting things away, maybe just sterilize the equipment that you're using, like your scissors. Don't grab your child stationery scissors from school that have been used with Prit and with the kids' flus and everything. Rather sterilize it. A little bit of alcohol. Isopropyl alcohol. Remember those pandemic days? Yeah. Use that on your pair of scissors or your clippers, and then go ahead and clip away all the stuff. If there is that little plug at the base of your orchid, take that away. Wrap that in some sphagnum moss, and there you go. So, gosh, our time has literally flown, but don't go away, Nico, because you will stay with us for the rest of the show. I want to talk to you all a little bit about a very interesting plant in terms of nature's apothecary. So nature's apothecary, we're talking orchids, and there are some really, really rare kinds of orchids, but there is also a very rare kind of a plant for nature's apothecary today that grows in extremely cold conditions. And if you are somebody who is feeling, here we go, stressed, irritable, tired, frustrated with life, and just psychologically trying to heal from things because you are feeling edgy, then this is a succulent that just keeps going all year long, and it's called Rhodiola rosea, or rose root. It's also known as golden root. Now, growing it might be difficult, but you can get the dry plant, and it is a brilliant one to use for stress, even to help you to treat fatigue, weakness. If you are struggling to sleep, then that's a nice one to have as well. You would basically make a tea of Rhodiola rosea. What does it look like? It actually looks like a rose cactus. So if you think of those succulents that look like a rose, and you find them everywhere all over South Africa, think of a miniature one, but from the center, from the heart of that, grows this pom-pom-like flower in bright yellows and bright oranges. That is the golden root. So if you're needing that mental balance, that sleep, you basically pour the boiling water over the plant, which is the roots of the plants. That's what you will get. And you would let it steep for about 15 minutes. If you leave it, the longer you leave it, the more bitter it gets. And here's the thing about bitterness. We think that bitterness is bad for us, whether it is life or whether it is nutrition. And bitterness is actually great for us because it's all about gut health. Nico, you and I were talking earlier on about gut health and probiotics and brushing your teeth, and how that strips away all the good and the bad bacteria from your teeth.
And in your mouth as well.
In your mouth. So you wanting to, if you've brushed your teeth, you want to put a little bit of stevia on there, or you could take a chewable probiotic like Roy Terry, Nico was suggesting, for the mouth. So similar to that, our plants also, the more bitter they are, the better they are. especially for our gut health. So those vegetables that are bitter, those teas that are a little bit bitter, those plants like the golden root are really, really good for you, and they're great for gastrointestinal health. If we consider our gut, we've been talking about orchids and the roots of these orchids, and if you saw and if you see on Facebook the length of these roots, they are almost like the intestine of human beings, because they will absorb the food, they will do what they need to do to the food to direct it back to the cells of the plant. So very important to keep our roots of our orchids healthy and to keep our gut healthy, and bitter foods do that. Remember, once you have made your tea with golden root, you could always add some honey to it. Personally, I say if it is a herbal tea, and this is one of those, then it's best to just don't take anything with it. Let it be bitter, because bitter is better. Bitter is better. And we spoke to Nico about our orchids, and just now we're going to get our technician to get a hold of our next guest, because I want you to guess what we're going to be talking about. So here is the riddle. The riddle is, I live in the ground, but I don't have a home. You'll find me in pots, sometimes under a stone. I can't see a thing because I don't have eyes, but if they tell you I'm useless, they're telling you lies. Aha! What am I? What am I? I wonder. You know, don't give it away.
I won't give it away.
So, what is our next chat about for the next 15 minutes? I live in the ground, but I don't have a home. WhatsApp us on 060-904-1056. Riddle again. I live in the ground, but I don't have a home. You'll find me in pots, sometimes under a stone. I can't see a thing. There's your clue. I can't see a thing because I don't have eyes. But if they tell you I'm useless, they're telling you lies. And do we use those things? We won't give away what they are. Do we use them for orchids? Do orchids like them?
I haven't
really.
really used them for orchids.
No, because I would imagine that they might eat the actual covering of the
soil.
root. No? Yeah, it's a different substrate. Yeah,
different substrate.
Yeah.
So
and this particular thing needs to be in the soil, and it needs to process the soil. So, hello. Do we have our? No, we don't have Don on the line as yet. We're going to be talking to Don Blacklaw in just a moment. We're getting him on the line, and we're going to be talking about these things that live in the ground. And while we wait to get him on the call, remember, you can also phone us in studio on 0861 904 904. You will have heard the advert play earlier on about the breakfast rush on the 27th. That is next week, Saturday. So it's next week, Saturday, the breakfast rush. Walk along, hobble along, run along, come and join us, come and say hello, and go onto our website. That's www.alansar.org.za, and come and register for the walk along. We're going to take a very, very short ad break, and we'll be right back.
So, Bibi Amina, it's going to be 5 kilometers. Would you walk? Would you run? Would you jog? Would you stroll? What would you do?
Okay, I will walk.
You want to walk 5 kilometers?
Yeah, have to.
If you want to walk 5 kilometers with Bibi Amina, then you're going to have to be at the Breakfast Rush, Breakfast Fun Run with your family on the 27th of April. That's a Saturday morning. Run starts, walk starts, stroll starts. It starts at 6:30 a.m. Carry a basket for a picnic, because somebody's going to need to share samosa with me.
Education, health, dignity, empowerment. These wishes all begin with water. Africa Muslims Agency is committed to providing clean water to the thousands who still live without this basic human right. Support us in giving the best of charities. Provide a water well for 16,500 Rand, or a borehole for 55,000 Rand in Afghanistan, or 65,000 Rand in Africa. Gain Thawabi Jariyah and help communities to reach their full potential. Africa Muslims Agency, empowering, educating, inspiring.
The Outreach Slice of Life campaign. Since its inception, our Slice of Life has touched the lives of countless individuals through our distribution to schools, old age homes, orphanages, and deserving families within our community. This initiative has been instrumental in alleviating hunger. For only 9 Rand a loaf, you will be providing a family with their daily staple, bread. Donate now on www.alansar.org.za or call Outreach on 031 208 1601.
Radio Al-Ansar.
Welcome back to Green Thumbs Up. I'm your host and life coach, Rabia Carvalho. With me in studio is Nico Klittenkamp, and on the lines is our next guest. But I want to see who has guessed our riddle, and we've got a few takers here. HK says slugs, snails, or worms. Oh man, you can't just kind of throw everything out there. pick one. I think you may be right. Zora Bibi Sheikh says assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The answer is earthworms. Another answer to the question here. Ghulam Ali says salams. The answer is mole, from Ghulam Ali. Sister Zenat messaged and said, assalamu alaikum. Is it worms? Well, Sister Hasina says to us, from Hasina, earthworm. She also says, assalamu alaikum, how can I preserve my vegetables in winter because we have extremely cold weather in Newcastle? I tell you what we'll do. I've done quite a bit on food preservation before, but next week, Sister Hasina, please tune in and let's talk more about preserving those vegetables in the winter, because there are many ways to preserve vegetables. But for now, let's answer the question to the riddle. To give you the riddle again was, I live in the ground, but I don't have a home. You'll find me in pots sometimes under a stone. I can't see a thing because I don't have eyes. Okay, so now moles do have eyes. They do have eyes. But if you tell me I'm useless, they're telling you lies. Yes, it's earthworms. And with us on the line is Don Blacklaw from Wizard Worms. Don has made his life about earthworms, those wonderful creatures of the soil. If we think of earthworms, these humble little creatures, they basically wriggle through the soil, but they are the unsung heroes of the garden. Despite their little unassuming appearance, they play a very important role. They maintain our soil health, the fertility of our soil, and we're going to explore this fascinating world of earthworms and how they actually help us in the garden. So welcome to the show, Don. How are you this morning?
It's not Don, it's Patsy, sorry.
Patsy, you joined us instead of Don.
Yes, instead of Don's a little deaf, so that's why I'm here. And we are so excited to talk about the earthworms. They are nature's farmers of the soil.
They really are. I was concerned a little, I'll be honest, Patsy, when we spoke. I thought, gosh, I hope Don will be able to hear us. So I'm so glad that you've kind of taken over the reins, and welcome, Patsy. So Patsy is from Wizard Worms. This is, and so why are they so important to our ecosystem, though?
Well, they are the best soil conditioners, and they aerate the soil by tunneling through old roots and decaying matter, and they're keeping the soil friable and aerated.
Okay.
And they're just amazing creatures.
Yes, and they
recycle everything.
They do. All of that goes right through their little bodies. Now, are there some lesser known interesting facts about earthworms that you could share with us?
Well, there are approximately 6,500 different types of earthworms. What? And they all they all have their own job. And the ones that we work with, which are Ensia foetida, they don't require soil in their gut, so they can recycle all the uncooked kitchen waste and all the decaying matter.
Patsy, you have blown my mind. You have blown my mind. You have blown Nico's mind here in studio. We are thinking, my word, 6,500 types of earthworms.
So,
yes.
And you say those don't need to have soil in their gut, whereas
the ones that we use, which is wizard worms use, is Encia foetida.
Okay. So they
have 5 hearts and a very big vibration.
Wow.
So they're excellent for special needs children, or in fact any child to work with. Very, very therapeutic to have children handling them.
Patsy, okay, I'm going to try to kind of keep my volume and my calm down. I get so excited when I learn these new things. An earthworm, dear listener, think about it. This little earthworm with 5 hearts.
Yes.
And it's a therapeutic.
Very sensitive creatures.
Wow. Now, how long does it take for them to reproduce?
It takes about 6 weeks from the egg capsule to maturity.
6 weeks. And how long do earthworms live?
Well, they reckon that they sometimes a year or 2 years, but apparently they found one that had been isolated. They had it in isolation for 15 years. And when they looked at it, there was no sign of aging whatsoever. So perhaps we need to learn something from the worms.
Well, I am really big on anti-aging, and all of my followers will know they can find me on TikTok as Life Coach Rabia, and I do a lot of stuff on anti-aging, but earthworms, now there's something new. I mean, we hear a lot about snail stuff, but earthworms, 15 years, this little earthworm. Now they do require, we want to have you actually back and do a whole show on building a wormery and taking care of them. But for today, this is an introduction. And now we know what type of foods do they eat, because I know that one of the biggest mistakes we can make, as with orchids, overfeeding them, is earthworms. We overfeed them. You can kill them with kindness.
Yes.
So what do we
you can,
feed them,
because it goes toxic. The food goes toxic. So you feed them all your uncooked kitchen waste, no citrus, no onions, and definitely no pineapples. That is lethal.
Yes.
But they must have cardboard in their diet as well.
Right.
That's the carbon. And, eggshells, tea bags, all of that. Cardboard from inside your toilet rolls, your tea boxes, biscuit boxes, all of that. So you're recycling everything, helping global warming and less to the landfill sites.
Absolutely. And you're creating rich soil that you can then use.
Yes.
And that brings me to my next question, which is worm castings. Tell us a little bit about what those are and how we can use them.
Well, worm casts are nature's way of improving the soil and feeding the plants.
Right.
And they are bringing this all, you could say it's their poo, you might say. Yes. They're bringing all this up from the soil, and it's full of all the ingredients a plant needs.
Yes. Now, didn't I tell you?
It's absolutely wonderful, wonderful.
So we've got the worm castings, which is what they cast out of their body. So it is their poo.
Yes.
And then, of course, we have liquid gold, which is the worm wee. I've built myself a little wormery, and I collect the little worm wee at the bottom. But it's quite strong, isn't it? I just want to say, would you not need to dissolve or dilute, shall I say?
Yes, you need to dilute it about 30 to 1. And 100 to 1 for orchids. It's nourishment for the plants, and it's also a foliar feed.
So Nico's
but you can also use it. So you can use it neat to put cuttings in overnight.
Okay.
Hardwood cuttings, leave them overnight, and it's full of hormones, bacteria. It's actually incredible.
Wow.
And then you can plant the cutting.
So if you, dear listener, are watching these videos about people putting, rose clippings or plant clippings into bananas and things to try to get them to root, here's a better way. Worm wee. I have learned something today. And Patsy, you have taught our orchid expert something. He looked at me with big eyes now going, what? Worm wee? Orchids times 100? Yes. So 100 times a dilution rate. And you said 30 times for other plants.
30 times for other plants. You just water it on the plants, and it's like a foliar feed. Also, if you've got, Nunus eating it, it does help as well to water with the worm wee. Okay. You think if you've got a healthy plant, it's not going to get sick. So we must mulch the soil.
Yes.
We have to look after the soil.
Yes. We've got to keep our soil free of all sorts of nunus. And also we've got to keep it well fed. Gosh, Patsy, I cannot believe that 15 minutes has gone by already in the blink of an eye that we've been talking to you. But I want to have you back on, and we need to talk about how to actually build a wormery, how to set it up for ourselves. Quickly before you go, tell us, you can grow earthworms obviously in wormeries, but you could also introduce them to the soil. Any special things that we need to do if we're going to introduce them into the ground directly?
No, not these ones. You can't introduce them to the ground. They will die.
Okay. So Patsy,
they have to live in a very organic, damp situation.
Okay.
So they have to be in the wormery, and then or a container, whatever container you make of your own, and they will then produce the worm cast for you.
Yes.
And the worm wee.
Sure. So we've just
if anybody's interested, they can go onto our website.
Yes, please. Which is
www.wizardworms, and the wizard has got 2 Z's, .co.za.
There we go. Patsy,
or they can phone us if they'd like.
Sure, give us your number.
082 301 5371.
Okay. Thank you so much, Patsy. We've learned so much this morning from you. Goodness, you dropped a bomb for us. You dropped that mic and left no crumbs. You ate it all up. So
Very
Patsy, you can reach Patsy on 082 301 5371. That brings us to the end of our show. We have a final comment I want to read out. Nasima Muhammad, Salaam Alaikum. She says, I'm totally gobsmacked that a type of earthworm has 15 hearts. Now it's 5 hearts. It lived for 15 years.
5 hearts, yes.
We learn every day.
One live for 15, but usually it's 1 year or 2 years, I think they live for.
Perfect. There you go. Thank you so much, Patsy. The rest of the comment here is, as squeamish as I am, I've always known how an important role of earthworms play. So how important the role that earthworms play. Oh, and your show and guests rock. Loving the show. Love to everyone there from Nasima Muhammad. Love to all of you. Remember us in your duas. And from us until next week, where we are going to see you at the fun run. Green thumbs up from myself, Life Coach Rabia, the whole team at Al Ansar. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
An informative Islamic global perspective. This is Al Ansar News.
Breaking news at 10, a Durban woman has asked the court to jail the schoolboy who killed her 15-year-old son, and tens of thousands of demonstrators hit the streets of Spain Canary Islands to demand changes to the model of mass tourism that they say is overwhelming the Atlantic archipelago. Good morning, I'm Tabile Duma. A Durban woman has asked the court to jail the schoolboy who killed a 15-year-old son over a girlfriend. Joanna Pretorius, aged 60, told a magistrate J. Jury in the Pinetown Regional Court on Friday, Rayleigh Naidu has not shown a remorse for stabbing her son, Jaden Glazer, in the lower abdomen with a Shogun steak knife on the 4th of March in 2022. Naidu, who was 16 at the time of the killing, is now 18 years old. Jaden was taken to hospital but died shortly after arrival. Pretorius was among members of the gallery on Friday when the court convened for the aggravation and mitigation of sentences arguments for Naidu,